Okay, perfect. Hello, everybody. If you're watching the replay, today is January the 18th. And as I promised you, we are having JD Eicher. Um, it's amazing what happens when you ask, if you ask, and the power of social media. And he's a prime example of the power of social media. So I'm going to give you my story as to how I became connected with JD, but I'm going to leave it to him to give you his very um it's a fascinating story. I think a book should be written about JD, like the whole story of JD, because he has so many things, including Speedway, which he will tell you about as well. And then how he goes about telling the stories about his children, and you don't know this about him, but he's one of his children is his doctor. I watched that. So not to take any more time, because every second that I take is taken away from JD. But here's what I want you to tell you. Here is the power of you being in social media. JD is a prime example, and when you hear his story, you're going to hear the beauty of being on social media. But I was actually looking to find all things Nicholas Sparks. So I was researching everything Nicholas Sparks. I wanted to know everything about Nicholas Sparks. So I literally was researching everybody that was following him. True story. And that's where I found that Nicholas Sparks was promoting JD. And I was like, he must be someone special. So I started following him. I reached out to him, and then I started seeing his story and seeing how his story connected with Nicholas Sparks, the author of The Notebook. So when I found out his story, I was like, oh my gosh, you gotta go talk to my entrepreneurs, because your story, as you know, I was married once to a musician, so I know the ebbs and flows of a musician, especially a professional musician, that you can support your family as a professional musician. So with that being said, all it takes is you asking people, will you? And that's it. You let them say yes or no, but you don't take the power of their choice for them to say yes or no. So with that, I am so grateful forever and ever that I did ask you, JD, because I think everybody's in for a treat. There's going to be a couple of people that are not feeling so hot. Mary's one of them. Mary would almost always be on camera, but she actually has COVID and she is feeling horrible, but because she knows you're here and she calls you the hottie, she's like, I cannot miss this, Maria. So with
Oh
that
man.
being said, I want to go ahead and get myself out of the way. So if you wouldn't mind sharing your story, after you share your story, then I'll proceed with asking some questions. So take it away.
All right. Well, thanks for the tagline, Mary. I appreciate that. I'm sorry you're not feeling well though. Guys, it's great to be here. I really am honored to do this, and thank you for asking me, Maria. I appreciate it. Um, yeah, it was so the gist of what I do is I'm primarily a singer songwriter, so like a performing singer songwriter. So I tour solo acoustic with a guitar or little keyboard, or I have a band with me as well, and travel kind of all over the place, almost almost always in the states, but occasionally abroad. And yeah, I started right out of college. I had always been very into music, but I didn't really get the songwriting bug until really end of high school, into college, and slowly it just started to take priority over my studies. And I was racing home from classes to get an extra 20 minutes with the instrument and that kind of thing. And it just became apparent that that was really what I wanted to do. And so I had that very awkward conversation with my parents, who had been very supportive of college and were hoping I was going to become a business guy and stuff. And I said, what if I did a year of music? We just kind of saw how things went. And I could see the fear in their eyes, but they agreed. And then we just didn't talk about it again after that year. But I began by just trying to book whatever gigs and engagements I could find for the music. So coffee shops, or in the back of a bar, or wineries sometimes would have musicians, and over time kind of scaled from there. So in the beginning it was if I could just get a couple gigs where I could get my name out, and then it was like if I could get a couple gigs that maybe paid a couple $100s, I could afford rent, and slowly built off of that general idea. And so over time, I formed a band and recorded a record on a very, very much a shoestring budget, and then recorded another record and shopped it around. And Nicholas Sparks came along as we had signed with a management company and a record label, real small indie label, and the distributor for that label was also tied in with Nicholas Sparks and his the music company that was handling the releases for the soundtracks to his movies. And so he was looking for somebody to write a song um, that would be inspired by his upcoming novel. And so I was lucky enough to get my name thrown in the hat, and I got, I was lucky. I got the call and talked to Nicholas about his book, and he was finishing writing it, and so the different themes that he was working on, and then I took all, I'm on the phone, I'm trying, nervously, I'm writing all this down, trying to get it right, and then jumped off the phone and over to the piano and started to uh, to write the song, and I was back and forth with him and his team, and ultimately got to do this kind of like a soundtrack to the novel, essentially, and went on the book tour with him, and it was an incredible experience. He was very kind, and he in the initial conversation, right out of the gate, kind of made space for me to be my own voice. He said, I don't want you to write I want you to write a song that you want to play, and that was just like permission, to really dig in and throw my heart into it. And so, but it's been a lot of just grinding along and playing the 3 hour gigs at the wineries, and driving to Iowa for one show because you couldn't end up booking another show around it. So you still got to go to Iowa for that one show. I live in Ohio. I don't know, it's like 8 hours, something like that. But you know what I mean? And so it's been a lot of that primarily. And then every once in a while, something lucky comes along, like a Nicholas Sparks opportunity that has kind of allowed me to stay in the game a little bit longer. And I, Maria, what you were saying, it really plays into it. I kind of have this rule that I try to say yes whenever I can. I mean, you can't always say yes to everything, but I try to say yes whenever I can. I feel like it's just a good thing, a good exercise to be available when you can be available, and to try to do and take on opportunities and experiences whenever possible. And that, I think that's kind of been, at the forefront of a lot of those opportunities, was just saying yes a lot, and then hoping that you can deliver on those yeses, as you go, and getting better at that, as you go along. But and so I've did that, and I've been just on the road even more, and now I tour with the band and solo, and I also have, you're looking at part of I have a little studio, and so I do custom music for brands, and different initiatives like that. Kind of during the day, I'll be in the studio quite a bit. I'm working on my own music, but also working on everything from like a little bit of a music bed for a commercial or a jingle type thing, or helping other songwriters write their songs, and kind of a whole variety of things. But it's a lot of, like, you throw everything at the wall, and you hope a good enough amount of it sticks so you can make the bills. Is the truth of it. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. Incredible. I have a question for you in regards to when you were talking about the grinding, right? You driving from one state to another state, an 8 hour drive to just do one gig and then drive back because the bookings didn't happen the way that you thought they would happen.
Mhm.
How do you deal with the sense of like, am I really, because we're all here entrepreneurs and we're all at different levels, but not at where we think we should be.
Mhm.
Regardless of how successful or not successful everyone is in this room and the ones that are going to be listening to the replay, everybody's at a different level, but we all face it with this question. It's like, do I keep going? At what point, like, because I've been where, I used to do multi-level marketing, network marketing, and I would be the person that I would drive, or I would fly in somewhere, and the promise of having 20, 30 people ended up being one person.
Yeah, I know that feeling well. Yeah, yeah. Sometimes those college gigs that I'll play, they can be great. They can be, in a theater and it's full. But sometimes you get there and it's a cafeteria and there are two kids and they didn't know there was a show. So it can really be anything. Um, I feel that very much. I think, well, I mean, I would tell you, the way that I did that, especially early on, that was helpful. It was almost like I had to kind of trick myself a little bit, but I would, if I could get to a place where I had enough work, enough regular gigs, going. So say, I remember at one point I needed three paying gigs essentially to be the baseline where I wouldn't have to tap into my savings. So per month, I should say. So if I could keep enough gigs going, then I would always kind of build in one or two reach opportunities beyond that. And so I kind of knew where the floor was, and if I could be above that point, then I would take on those risks, kind of really with the expectation they might not work. And then every once in a while, when they did end up being a great opportunity or leading to another great opportunity, it paid for itself or it was worth it, in exposure or a connection, that kind of thing. And so I think sometimes, definitely with me now, if I can call it a business model, it's not quite organized enough to be a business model, but in the way that I do things now, I kind of build in the expectation of failure here and there, knowing that I have these other few, in the industry on touring, they call those dates that pay for a lot of it. They call them anchor dates. So if you can book an anchor or two on a tour, if I got to get from Chicago to New York, and those are my two, like, there's the paying gig on either end, I can take a couple risks, through Ohio or Pennsylvania to get there because I've got those two on either end that I know are going to help me cover the cost. And so that was kind of a theme, and still is, but it's certainly kind of built into the model, is expect to fail here or there, as long as you got that kind of support net of other opportunities around it. But I think that opens you up to those experiences you couldn't have otherwise because you had to say no in a different situation. If that is that making sense?
Oh, completely makes sense. Now, my next question, how, and I know the story, but I know they don't know the story because you shared it with me. How in the world do you end up working with a caliber of Nicholas Sparks? I mean, were you best friends? Was Nicholas like a good friend of the family and everybody, he would just extend you a favor? What's the story behind that?
I was just talking to my dad about this. That was truly a really lucky moment. I always think I don't have any, I don't have any like secret wisdom or tricks to the moments when things went well, but I do think that some of those cliches that you hear, I'm seeing them unfold, especially later in after I've done some of the preparation and some of the slog, if you will. But that was a good example of, there's a saying like luck is when uh, opportunity and preparation, like timing and preparation, or opportunity and preparation meet. So you've got this, you're in this lucky moment where you're prepared for the thing as it comes along. And I do think that was kind of that moment where I had the right song, and there was somebody at this distributor that I mentioned. His name is Jason Sprague, such a nice guy, and he was a believer in the indie artist, and he just kind of took a chance and threw my name in the mix with, um, I don't think I'm allowed to say the other artists, but there were some like big names in the hat as well. And he was like, this song just feels like maybe something that Nicholas would like. And it was one of those moments where he heard that, and it was enough. It was close enough to the mark that they felt good enough about me taking a shot at the project. And so it was just, yeah, it was kind of that moment of luck. And I had that song, but at the same time, I should say that particular song. So the Nicholas Sparks thing happened in 2016. I released that song that got me the gig in 2011. So it's that as just one of the tracks that I would play sometimes for 5 years, and I would have told you it was just kind of one of the tunes, but I had no idea that would be the thing that would kind of keep me in the business, and really kind of change my life and keep me on a trajectory where I could do this. And so sometimes you've already got the thing, and it's like in the incubator, and if you're an entrepreneur, you probably have this great idea, and it's a matter of like, when is that idea the right time for either for the public or for that person who needs to help you find that audience for it. So I think it can be really challenging to continue to believe in whatever you're doing, um, in those dry spells. But at least what I've found along the way is if you just keep grinding at it, and you're kind of relentless in your own self belief, or at least confidence that you should keep going. If you can keep it going long enough, a door will open along the way. You just got to be there to walk through it, I guess, to use every cliche that is available.
In those cliches, I'm a firm believer that they are there because somebody went through that to be able to make that cliche. One of the things that Mary asked is, Oh, here's the quote. Luck is what happens when preparation meets
There it is.
opportunity. It's a quote attributed to and she's a teacher, by the way, to the
Okay.
Roman philosopher Seneca. Seneca was a Stoic philosopher.
Yeah.
And in regards to what you were saying, and I'll bring up back, I'll circle back to a question that Mary has, is that there's a few people that are not present and a few people that are here present that a couple of them are very gainfully employed and they love what they do, but their
Yeah.
passion is that they want to do their own thing and they want to
Mm,
be their own boss. They want to do what you do, except in, in their space versus being a musician. And there's a few other people that have just gotten that horrible news that they're laid off. And some of them have made the hard decision that, okay, do I give a shot to what I've always dreamed of, to be my own boss, call my own shots, do my own thing? What got you to the place where you said, I know that you were young when you approached your parents, and now being, a family man, a husband and a dad,
mm.
how do you work through, because the life of a musician, because I was married to one, and I mean he was gainfully employed all the time because he was in the military, and he actually
Oh, wow.
one time, do you know who Wynton Marsalis is?
Sure.
We went to Wynton Marsalis and we were backstage with him, and he
Oh,
says,
that's cool.
"A question for you." Wynton is like, "Yeah." He says, "Do you know what the army can do for you?" It was hilarious. It was just hilarious. But so even though he had a permanent gig, and and he was doing well, it was still the life of a musician. It has ups and downs and all these other things. How how did you rationalize it in your head
Mm,
to, because have you ever had a situation where, whether it was your kids, your wife, maybe your parents, something maybe not tragic, but something really tough was going on, and you could have been the person that said, you know what, I'm just gonna park my music, my writing,
mm.
my production. I'm just gonna park it because all of this is needing me right now. What kept you from doing that and keeping going?
Yeah, wow, those are good questions. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna do my best to answer it all. Definitely let me know if there's a piece missing along the way. But I would say that what got me started in it was a combination of the right amount of, I was young and I was naive, and this was what I wanted to do, and I've been fed the propaganda that you can do whatever you want if you really do it. But that is true. It might not look like you know what you think it'll look like. And I think in the music industry, everyone making it is as an artist is like, there's like 25 people who have actually made it as an artist that we can name, but there is kind of another path if you're not, like in my case, I didn't have a ton of money and I didn't know anyone in the business to speak of that could kind of, any artist that we know the name of had some kind of lucky amplification through a big name or that sort of thing, or a lot of money to get that name behind them. But the other road is maybe like what your ex-husband found, and what I found is that there is kind of you can hustle and you can put in the hours and find a road that works. Um, and so out of school, I kind of just took that road, and I think I had a high tolerance for risk, and just like I said, a little bit of the right amount of naivete to dance around the risk. But over time, also, you kind of, as you get into a thing, in my case, those were the skills I had, so I had to figure out how to make it work, and that just kind of, I think, helped me to double down on it. And sometimes, having no other option, or kind of knowing that this is the lane that you're in and you got to stick to it, is enough of its own motivation, because you have to do it, or it's the best shot you got. So there's a little bit of that in play. But you're right, as soon as you start to introduce other people, so I got married, and now I have two kids, and it's not just your dream, it can become everyone else's problem at the same time. And that is quite a delicate dance. And I'm very lucky. I think that part of the formula is that you need a partner who, if you have a partner, that they are very supportive of it, or at least understand what you're doing or why you're there. And my wife, thankfully, sees how making art is such a kind of a part of my identity. It's how I not how I process the world, how I escape from it at the same time, and I kind of need it. And so she's very supportive and just has been solid about that the whole time, and never complains about something unless I'm already complaining about it. I feel like I have to. That's like her permission. If I'm like, oh, this is tough, then maybe she'll jump in, but it's not until I run my mouth first. So that is a very helpful thing. Um, but you're right. There have been times, and I've certainly taken a more scenic route recently with my career as we had our second kid, and she works as well, and so we moved to accommodate her job, and with childcare and things like that, she has a more regular gig. So I will sometimes, and today's a good example. I'll get up early with the kids and cover while she works more of the regular hours, and then I'll maybe do the late night in the studio and work around whatever. I work during her lunch break, and there are days like that where everything does kind of get set to the side, and I probably play about half the shows that I used to play, so that I can be home and more present with the kids. And I used to tour maybe 3 weeks, 2 weeks. I'd go out, and now I'll go out for like 3 days, 4 days maybe, and then come back and be home for a week and then go back out. And so there's a pay cut in that, and there's also kind of a career. You can really kind of stunt your own trajectory that way, and I felt that. But I'm not. It's a funny music, particularly. You don't get into it necessarily to make money. You get into it because it's the thing you got to do. And so I'm comfortable not being. I don't need to be a millionaire on music. I'd like to be able to do it and make a living at it. And so I'm lucky enough through all that mess to find that avenue to do that. But I would say that that if you really see yourself taking this road and the entrepreneurial path, if that's part of who you are and you really feel that pull, that is the thing. I think you can lean into that and use that energy, because what I've noticed in people is there are folks that have that, and that's at the core. If you've got that, you can do it. Whatever you're selling or making or whatnot.
Exactly. Now, have you ever had an experience where, like let's say, like with me, one of the things that I had was that my dad passed away, and it wasn't necessarily what we had anticipated. In June 2021, my dad passed away, and obviously I wasn't ready. I mean, he had been getting sick, but the way that I'm wired, it was that I found a way to continue to work on my business. I found a way to figure it out, have you ever had situations where you could have, any other person in your shoes would have called it, you know what, I'm just going to park and not do anything, like right now, right? You could just take a back seat and say, you know what, it's too much, I'm just
Mhm.
not going to do it. What keeps you to make sure that you stay in the game versus be get out of the game? Because a friend of mine used to say, Maria, if you move away from the fire, what happens? You're cold,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And that's what I always see when people move away from the fire, whether it's entrepreneurship in music, or it's entrepreneurship in whatever method it is. If you stay away, then ultimately you end up losing, that drive per se. So has there ever anything happened in your life that while you've been a musician, or yeah, I mean the primary thing is you being a musician, that could have tripped you up and you could have chosen not to do it, but you said, no, this is what this, like you said, this is my identity, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's a good question. Definitely, and I think this is probably true for a lot of small businesses and entrepreneurs. There's these seasons of feast and famine, right? And there are cycles to this stuff. And in when you're early on in a music career, um, and you put out a record, it's maybe one of the first records or two, one or two records you've got out, and so it's easier to drum up a little more interest or buzz, that sort of thing. And now I'm further into doing this, and so it's harder to get kind of momentum going with the release and those sorts of things, and that in itself is tough to stay excited sometimes around those things. The moments that come to mind particularly are In fact, one of them, stick to the Nicholas Sparks theme, and this is a story I've told a lot, but I got that news about the Sparks thing. I was touring through the Carolinas, and I had just it had been an abysmal run. It was, you were talking about that flight out to have an event with one person, and it was like a number of those shows in a row. It was really kind of a rough showing. I don't know how many gigs that particular tour was, but most of the shows were a bust. I mean, losing money. Venues were upset. I was on the road with another songwriter, and we were not drawing audiences, and it was really not going well. And I remember, I mean, this is the truth. On the drive home, I was thinking, okay, I'm gonna go home. I'm gonna figure out, I've got a few more gigs on the books. I'll finish those off, but I'll start applying for jobs, and I'll leave this, kind of moment in my life, and I'll figure it out. I'll become a true adult and join society like a responsible, stop doing this man boy thing that I've been up to. And I literally, we were at a gas station on the way back from those shows, and I got the phone call from my manager at the time, and he said, "Hey, have you ever heard of Nicholas Sparks?" And I said, "Yeah, why?" And he said he wants to talk to you about something. And it was really kind of, I'm not a big miracle kind of guy, talking guy, but it really felt like a moment. Like I was like, all right, this is a moment where maybe I ought to double down and kind of look at this again and keep at it. So sometimes there are moments like that where you kind of get an opportunity that keeps you in the game, and I think that those are lucky. But and there have been a couple of moments like that where like a gig comes along that I've got to prepare for. And so in doing so, I book a couple other gigs, and I'm back in the rhythm of it again, and things kind of continue. But there are moments where I just get no a lot. If I'm shopping a record to management or to labels, there have been many times you hear no so much more than you hear yes, and I'm sure that that's a common thing. I hope it is, because I definitely hear a lot of no's. And so for every 100 emails for gigs that I would send out, maybe you hear back from 10 folks. I mean, really, even when you have kind of a track record and you can prove ticket sales in different markets, it can be really tough for bookings and to get the interest of the right companies, the right management or record labels, and those sorts of things. And so there have been moments for sure when you're just not the thing, you're not the hot thing, you're the wrong fit for whatever's happening in music. In fact, right now, the kind of music I make is not what works at radio right now. It just, unfortunately for me, it isn't what's working. And so that in itself can be pretty discouraging. Even if you scale that back from radio and you just say commercially, it's just not what's selling right now. So that's just a tougher road, but you figure out your avenues, and there are audiences for every kind of music. And so sometimes it involves a little pivot or a change in mindset along the way. And I think what's kept me in it ultimately is just that I really love writing songs. I mean, it's a weird thing. I'm not even comfortable with how much I like it, but like, if there's a guitar in the room and no one's around, I'm picking it up. That's my thing, and it's a very much like a giving thing. I need it just to kind of like reset, but I also love the process of creating things. So I'm kind of wired to whatever I can do to keep doing that is in it. And I think, that's kind of what I was saying before, is I think if you can feel that energy where you really want this path, you want to be your own boss and find your own way, that can really be fuel for the moments of famine.
Wow, what I've always heard, the harder I work, the luckier I get. And if you had not stayed in the game, if you had called it quits because things got tough, then that call could never have happened because you were not in the game. Somebody else would have gotten that call. So I
Yeah.
mean, I could ask you a gazillion more questions, but I know that that I'm cutting it close. So I'm gonna go ahead and open it up for a couple of questions, and then I'll circle back to three more questions for you, and then we'll call it an evening, and then that way you can go back to your kids and your family. So Mary asked, because as you probably know, Nicholas Sparks just released his Miracles book.
Wow.
Did you see that?
I think he just did. He announce it, right? It's
Yeah,
coming
he
out.
just didn't.
Okay.
Well, he hasn't released it. It's going to be released in September.
Okay.
So he
Right.
probably needs a jingle for that.
Oh, I hope that'd be great.
You probably need a jingle for that. So Mary was asking if you have anything Any other movie deals in the works for soundtracks?
In movie deals. No, I right now, um, the stuff that I've got going on, I'm doing some music with. There's a record label in Prague that I just signed some music to, and so they do a lot of like TV network stuff and so ads and also TV show music over there in Europe. So I'm working with them a little bit, and I've been doing some custom music. I just did a project with over here in Ohio for the Ohio Lottery, and made some music for. They did a really cool advertising campaign at radio where they bought radio ad blocks, but instead of having an ad there, they had a song that was kind of an advertisement and different genres depending on what radio station you were in. So if you were listening to country radio, there's a country song that came on, but it was an ad for this game you could play with the lottery. So little custom projects like that I've been doing kind of behind the scenes when I'm not on the road playing my own stuff. And I'm working with the Speedway brand. You mentioned them earlier, the gas station chain, which is such a funny. That's another example of kind of weird worlds colliding. But I put this little joke. My video guy came out to a show, shot a whole show, and then took all the music out, and he just posted it. He sent me a video of just the talking in between. And I was high on Speedway coffee. I'd had way too much coffee. I was real tired. So I'm like shaking, but I've got too much coffee. I'm just running my mouth. But I looked at the camera and I was like, if anybody's at Speedway and they want to get in touch, just jokingly. I do love their coffee though. So I was kind of kidding. I didn't expect it, but Speedway ended up seeing it because somebody was tagging them in the comments or whatever. And so now I'm doing some work for them and like influencer videos and little things, but no big motion pictures or anything. I wish that'd be great, but nothing.
Not yet. Not yet. You never know when the next thing is coming. Exactly.
Oh, that'd be
Okay,
cool.
Miss Hilda, you can ask a question if you have a question to ask. Or if Miss Hilda is not ready, then we can go to Rhonda. Go ahead, Rhonda, and then we'll go to Hilda after.
Okay, so did you ever find out how Nicholas Sparks found you?
Yes, that's a good question. Yes, so there's this gentleman that worked at basically, as I understand it, there were these two record label distributors, and they work closely together on projects that Nicholas was on, his movies and whatnot. So the movie side reached out to this other label and said, hey, we're looking for someone to write this song for Nicholas Sparks. Do you have anybody? And so they sent over kind of a list of artists, and just through the grace of this guy and his kindness, he threw in an indie artist, somebody who wasn't a name, and I was lucky to get in the mix for that. And so anyway, so they reviewed the music, and I had this song that it's an old song. It's called "Love Is Gonna Find You," and it just happened to kind of strike the right tone for what they were looking for. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. Right.
Yeah, very lucky.
Do you have another question, Miss Rhonda?
Yes. So does music, do you have several songs like started, and does it just kind of come to you? Do you just like think of songs at various times or in the night, throughout the day? Do you have lots of them started?
That's a good way of asking that. I call them, I think it's a term. I call them song starts. But in fact, the way I tend to usually will write. I'm never in a situation where I have a song idea and I'm like, I have 3 hours to write it. You know what I mean? So it's a lot of, I'm driving, or the infamous shower situation where everybody gets great ideas. I'll get them in the shower, or I'll be playing with my kids, and that's the hardest one because I don't want to not be present, but I got to get that idea in my voice memos so that I can revisit it. So I have a lot of voice memos. That's where I tend to keep melody ideas. So I have a lot of voice memos where I'm singing, and I've got like a 3-year-old who's like, "Dad, Dad, Dad." But I'm just trying to get this little idea out so that later when it's quiet, I can figure it out and try to write some words or whatnot. But it's a lot of that, just little kind of ideas throughout the day or throughout the week that might turn into something, and I keep them together and revisit them whenever I can. Yeah.
Sure.
Perfect. Great question, Miss Rhonda. And then Miss Hilda, are you ready? You gotta unmute yourself, honey.
Yeah, you might be able to. I don't know if you can do that.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah, I can hear you now.
Now, I just wanted to ask you, what are you working on right now?
Yeah, I'm working on. That's a good question. I'm slowly chugging away at a new record. So I've got maybe um, I'm on the fourth track for this album, and so in fact, the other side of like if you kept going through, there's a wall. I've got a couple speakers here and kind of recording studio stuff behind the speaker or the screen here, and so I've been sitting here all day just editing things and my OCD is just flaring up as I try to get the drums to sound just right and all that stuff. But slowly working on a new album. That's the primary thing. I have a few, little custom, like I mentioned, little custom music projects that will come in and out. I'll get a note and then I'll go back and fix that, send it off, and 3 days later I'll get another note. So kind of like that type of thing.
That's cool. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Miss Hilda. That's a great question. And then one question and then two closing questions. Actually two questions. They're kind of one and wrapped into one. So how do you maybe this never happens to you, but do you ever get into a funk? And then if you do, how do you get out of those?
Yeah, you mean like a creative, like a kind of a writer
Any
block
kind of funk,
thing?
like you just don't feel like it. You know you should write, but you're not writing, or you should go start looking. Because like gigs don't just happen, right?
Yeah.
Even I know I look at J Lo, I look at Taylor Swift, I look at all the big names, and they're hustling. I look at Grant Cardone, they're hustling. I mean,
Yeah.
you see them on TikTok. I mean, you see them everywhere, and it's not like it's an avatar. It's not like it's somebody else. It's them putting out the content.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, do you ever get in a funk where you just you don't feel like going to a gig, or you don't feel maybe the gig is okay, but maybe finding the gigs and doing all the stuff that gets you to be a professional musician, if that makes sense?
Definitely. Yeah, it definitely happens. Yeah. Creatively, when I'm in a funk, like if I'm just not getting the ideas that I'd like to be getting, or I'm not feeling motivated, that actually plays into what Rhonda had asked about. I do kind of keep that like little library of ideas that sometimes I can go in and find an older concept or a lyric and then I'm like, okay, you know what, maybe I can play with this, and maybe that'll kind of get the gears turning, so I can do that. Or I will try to kind of do a different thing. Like if I've got time in a day and I'm just not feeling it, I'll try to do some other. If maybe I'm supposed to write songs, but maybe that day I'm going to start to record some ideas. That will get me moving. Just kind of sometimes it's just the momentum of doing something gets you to do something. So there's that. If I'm in a mental funk, some kind of exercise is always like what gets me going. So if I can go for a run or a walk, or just go up and down the stairs of my house a little bit or something, run around with my son, that'll usually get me out of whatever, or get me started away from whatever kind of negative mindset I'm in. And then with the gigs and the work, some of it is kind of seasonal, so you're a little bit at the the whims of the market and those sorts of things. But in fact, just yesterday I sat down and I realized I really hadn't been keeping track of like potential gigs for the summer. So I just sat down, I looked at the calendar for the past 3 years, like what June, July, August, what gigs have I played that I should try to get again or revisit. And so sometimes just like if I can just that making that list was enough to get me moving. So I was like, all right, I'm just gonna I'm not gonna reach out, because that's a whole insecurity game, because you got to ask for the and then sometimes I'm just not up to it. But I can make a list of things people I should reach out to, or things that I could do, and then the next day my goal is to send those first 4 emails, and so a lot of times just if I can just get started on the one thing, that's probably it. That's probably the biggest thing, is if I just get going on something, I can keep moving once I'm moving, if that makes sense,
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, when it happens to distractions, distractions, not distractions, distractions, how do you deal with distractions? Because I'm sure there's a lot of offers that people have great ideas for you that are not really in your lane, that could be profitable, that could be lucrative, but it's going to totally derail you. How do you deal with distractions so that you stay in your game?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think is if it like with a gig offer, or or some kind of like music offer or job that I don't feel right with. The way that I analyze things, I think, I tend to either, if it will, from a gig standpoint, if it makes sense for me and also the venue or the other people involved, sometimes you get what's called like a support offer. And so there's an artist who maybe is playing in, let's say, Chicago, and they want an opening act that can help sell tickets. So that maybe the headlining act can sell 150 tickets in a small room, but they'd really like to sell 50 more. So you'll get an outreach, and they'll say, "Hey, would you like to open for this artist? Can you sell it some more tickets?" In those moments, I have to think like, okay, can I make enough money to get myself to Chicago and back? Because it'd be great to play in front of a new audience. Can I sell enough tickets that it's the right deal for this person? So sometimes it's just dollars and cents. But I think if you can kind of weigh that against, is it fun, and does it kind of keep you moving forward toward your own goals at the same time? So kind of like, how does it align with your goal, with your general goals? Does it make financial sense or promotional sense enough? And is it fun? I guess sometimes you don't get to have fun, but hopefully it hits enough of those things.
And that's
I'm saying
that's
all this,
great.
by the way. I was gonna say, I'm saying all this, by the way, like there's too much of an expert error here. A lot of times I'm just like, yeah, I don't know, or a lot of times I'm just hoping to say yes to something. So it's really, you've given me this platform where I feel like I need to sound like I know stuff, but a lot of times I'm just barreling along, hoping for the best. So I hope that is clear. But
For as long as you've been a professional musician, I think you probably know more than you give yourself credit to, just with all due respect. I'm actually certain of that because of how I've been following you and your story and everything. So now, speaking about fun, I'm going to ask you two last questions. One question is, what habit have you done? And that might not be fun, but I'm a geek when it comes to like habits and, like making a human, more hacks.
Mm.
What is the number one habit that you have implemented that has made the most amount of impact in your everyday life?
Okay, this is a good one. I know I got an answer ready to roll. This has changed. This has definitely been for me the most effective thing, and I do it. It's like my everyday thing, is just whatever I need to get done or whatever I desperately want to work on or improve. Whatever is like kind of priority. Maybe I've got like a pressing deadline, so that's the priority, or maybe there's nothing exactly pressing, so I can like work on a skill or something like that. But whatever it is it's like priority number one. It is the first thing I do every day. So like when I sit down and I've got like time to get some work done, that's the first thing always. And I shouldn't say always, when I'm doing a good job. And that has been really helpful because it's when, for me personally in the morning, it's when I'm the most motivated, and I'm not tired, I'm not worn out, drained by anything. So if I can just do the main thing first, again, it's kind of a momentum thing, like I was talking about earlier. Like if you can do that thing first, then it's easier to keep going, but it also ensures that you're at least hitting that. If you're triaging what you got to get done, you're at least getting the priority done. But that has been when I record albums and there's a deadline. Like the first time I ever self-produced something like at home, I just had a rule, like the first 3 hours of every day, I'm going to work on that record. I don't have any. Maybe I get one guitar part because it's hard and I'm not up to snuff. Maybe I get one guitar part done in that 3 hours, or maybe I get most of a song. But 3 hours a day, that's the block. And that was the only method for me, that I could kind of guarantee progress over time. So, but I think that if you're looking for a new thing to try, that first thing, everyday thing seems to be really helpful.
Yeah, it's like that book, Eat That Frog, Brian Tracy, and I think he coined it from somebody else. But it's do the hardest thing, the one that you don't want to do. That's the one thing that you do first. And then
Right.
my last question for you, JD, and thank you so much. I know that I went 12 minutes over
All good.
my
That's
time.
great. Thanks.
My last question is, what one fun thing have you implemented in your life that you absolutely love doing?
One thing. Well, this has been kind of like a hobby that has been exciting for me personally. A lot of people are like scratch their heads at this, but and everyone in my family is like, "Why are you doing this to us?" But my friend had this old sailboat that he was trying to get rid of, and he gave it to me, real screaming deal, $200 for this. It's a pretty humble boat. it was in horrible shape at the time, and it's been kind of a project painting it up and apologizing to my wife for the space it takes up in our garage and all this stuff. And yeah, I park out by the street now just to get this boat in the game. But it's been a real nice, like, I don't get to it all the time, but it's been a nice kind of escape to just something that I'm not good at, that I don't know much about, and I can just kind of get out there and tinker with it and try to improve it. And learning how to sail. Anybody sail, just out of curiosity? Has anybody ever tried
I
it?
know people.
Uh-huh.
My best friend's husband is a sailor, and so I'm familiar with people like you.
Okay, gotcha. It's the least. It's so inconvenient. Everything about it is a mess. You got. Yeah, I trailer this thing out. I have a little Chevy Cruze, and I trailer a boat with it, so it looks ridiculous. I get there. It takes like 45 minutes to get the rigging up, and like everything. There's all these. Everything has a special name. You don't dare call a rope a rope. It's a line. It's absurd. But something about the chaos of it, it's just, there's an enjoyment. It's like putting a puzzle together. Like, there's no real good reason to sit down and put a puzzle together, but like there's some kind of release that happens in the journey. It's kind of like that for me. So I've really enjoyed that. It's been a fun distraction, and sometimes just being out of my element is a useful thing. You come back fresh. So whatever sailing is for everybody else, I think it's a nice thing to get away from it all for a little bit.
Well, the thing about sailing, and having hung out with sailors, is that it's about the fact that you're creating something, and once you go, even if you're not in the water, you're really, because you're a musician, you're birthing something. And then
Mhm.
once you put it in the water, you're kind of taking a dare with the ocean, or lake, or whatever, whatever body of water you have. It's like you're daring. It's like, hey, I am coming over to you. Are we gonna play nice or what? So
Yeah.
I think the musician part of you probably, I mean, I would say, that's probably why you love it so much. But yeah, finding
Yeah.
something that brings you joy, that brings you a sense of achievement, that brings you a
Mhm.
sense of, I think that's why a lot of us are addicted to social media, because everybody that is going to be listening to this, we're all some sort of social media creators.
Cool.
And you know the way that social media grabs us is because they give us that sense of dopamine. You won,
Mhm.
you finished, you completed, you won, you won, you won. So
Yeah.
JD, I cannot thank you enough, and thank you for being
Oh,
so
pleasure.
gracious and giving us an additional 15 minutes, because
Oh,
I
yeah.
was trying to hurry, but there was questions that I wanted to make sure that I got, especially distractions. So I want to thank you so very much for spending your evening with us. And if there's any, shoot, I almost forgot.
Yeah.
Would you please share with everybody where they can find you?
Mhm.
What is it that you're promoting right now? And then if you could also share with them about the book that you have.
Yeah, thanks. Um, yeah, I don't have. I'm not. I don't have. I'm not like on a circuit or anything like that. No, this is really a junket scenario for me. So, but if you're up for it, my music's on Spotify. That's probably, or Apple Music, or wherever you listen. It's at streaming, and you can my name just as it is on the Zoom here, JD Eicher, Eicher. I'd love for you to check it out, and hopefully there's a song or two that works or resonates for you. So there's that, and I did my last record that I put out, has like a companion novel, it's a fictional story about these musicians on the road, and it's kind of a dark story. They're unlikely tour mates, and the whole thing goes to hell in a very dramatic sense. But the songs that they play on the road and on the tour kind of inform what happens in the story, and those are the songs that are on the album. So the album's called the Modesto Sessions, and the book is called The Lights Along Modesto. And you don't need to have one for the other, but they kind of work together. And so that book is available on my website if you're interested in a new story. But yeah, no, really, it's an honor to do this. I appreciate it. I like I said, kind of toward the beginning, a lot of what's worked out for me has just been banging my head against the wall until either the wall breaks or I finally back up and look around a little with a different perspective. I don't have any secrets, but I'm very lucky to get to do this job, and I'm honored to share hopefully some of these nuggets felt like nuggets, you know. But
They
thank you.
did.
Thanks
They
thanks for
were.
being here and listening.
I could see everybody's like, taking notes, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, yes, I can. You have been, like I said, you have a lot more wisdom and knowledge than you give yourself credit to, and especially as a musician, because I think musicians have so much to give to entrepreneurs and people, especially people that are starting up in their entrepreneurship, because you have seen so much more than the average, because you are an entrepreneur. It's just in the music side, so you have to deal with the creativity and also with the business side. So thank you so very much from the bottom of my heart.
No problem. No, I definitely have a heart for you guys doing this, because it's not easy. But I really hope whatever particular ventures you're in, I hope it works out. It's there's something special about when it goes your way and the idea works, and I hope you're all getting to feel that.
We do, and thank you so much, JD. We'll
Thank
see
you.
you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody. Yeah, cheers. Have a great
Bye.
night. Thanks.
Thanks, JD.
Wow, that was amazing. So, okay, I'm gonna